Ever had a conversation with your friends and said, this should be a podcast? Well, this is that. Welcome to Bonnerfide Conversations. What's going on, good people, and welcome to another episode of the podcast, Bonnerfide Conversations. I'm your host, Gerard Bonner, and I'm excited to be hanging out with you guys today as we are, yes, it is summertime. I think pretty much everywhere, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, is dealing with summer. Summer looks different for every country, et cetera, but it's such a unique time of year. And I asked myself, and I've done it right here on this podcast, are we going to continue doing these episodes during the summer? Are we going to take a summer break? Here's the reality of it. Life doesn't always take a break. Now, you probably should, and at some point I probably will. But I think the season that I'm in right now is one of those where I want to share it with you. There are some necessary lessons that are coming out of this. And I really hope that it is something that is useful to you. So shout out to all of you who have been joining us. You've been watching this podcast on our YouTube page, or you've been listening to it wherever it is you check out your podcast. Thank you so much for allowing what we do here at Bonnerfide Conversations and the Bonnerfide Podcast Network to be a part of your world. This is probably a good time to remind you that, go ahead if you're watching this on YouTube and subscribe to the Bonnerfide Media YouTube page. We have some really cool things happening there. Of course, this podcast is there. Our wrestling podcast is there. It's called The Faction Reloaded. We've got some amazing people on there with some really intelligent pro wrestling conversation. There are even archived episodes of another podcast called On Course with Hart Ramsey, a podcast that I hosted with Pastor Hart Ramsey, who is a brilliant mind. So you can go back and check out all of those. You can binge watch all of the things on our YouTube page. So go ahead and subscribe. So this way, when you are subscribed, you'll be able to get notifications when these new podcast episodes drop and you like to watch. Shout out to all of you again who are listening to us as well, wherever you are. I am so grateful, and shout out to our team who ensures that pretty much everywhere there's a podcast outlet, you'll find this episode and you'll find this podcast. So by all means, ladies and gentlemen, please do all of us a favor. Go ahead and lock into the podcast, subscribe, rate, download. Let's not assume that your voice doesn't have power. Let's not assume that your comment and your activity will not change the world, because it will. And I want you to be able to do that. All right, let's get into today's episode. One of the things that I find to be very interesting is how in my own life, the level of self-awareness has increased exponentially. Now, I've always believed that I was fairly self-aware, but I think over the last year and a half, 2 years, there's been really some intentional effort to increase that level of self-awareness. And there's a lot of reasoning for that. I think you have to get to the space where, if your life is not going in the direction that you desire, that you realize, hold on, wait a second. I have the opportunity to make some changes. And I really could park right there, to be perfectly honest with you, because so many of us have historically given our lives to chance, and we've lived que sera, sera, whatever will be, not realizing that, wait a minute, you have been given authority, you've been given intelligence, you've been given wisdom, to be able to make choices. And if the choice, and I've been saying this throughout this season, if you made a decision or a choice that you do not like, you are not beholden to that decision for the rest of your life. You get to make another decision. Now, there's certain things like, having a baby, you can't put the baby back, but you can decide how you are going to respond to having a child? How will you look at it from a positive perspective if you were one of those people who regrets having children? And no harm, no foul. There are people out there who regret having children, or maybe they regret having their children at the age and under the circumstances with which they did that, and understood, but you weren't intended to live your life in a space of regret. So if you find yourself there, again, make another decision. And sometimes that decision is to change your perspective. I'm telling you guys, if you take the time to do these kinds of things, you'll find that your life is much more enjoyable if you're willing to make a different decision. So, I've been making a series of different decisions over the last few years, and those decisions have led me to a greater level of self awareness. I will say this: you do not want to waste an experience. Let me say it again. You do not want to waste an experience. Some of us have gone through experiences that we have chosen to use as story time, right? Like, it's where you start telling the story of what you've been through, and you glorify what you have been through. You lift up what you have been through instead of extracting the lesson from it and taking that lesson into full time, real time application. I've realized that some people just want to have something to talk about. I is Bonnie Raitt, I think. Bonnie Raitt, and if I get it wrong, somebody will correct me. Bonnie Raitt, who had the song "Let's Give Them Something to Talk About," and if I'm wrong, someone will correct me. Nonetheless, yeah, I think people like having topics of conversation that involve great stories, and those stories usually place them either as the victim or the hero, but oftentimes the victim. It's the space of, wow, this happened to me and I can't believe it. And I can't believe this one and that one did this or said this, et cetera, et cetera. And oftentimes, now, okay, we're going to dig. Oftentimes, people who are like that are people who live for the reaction. Yeah, you post so that someone will like or comment. You do these kinds of things to get a response. And if you don't get a response, you feel like, well, maybe I ought to take that down, or maybe, I need to add some element to the story to get more sympathy or to get more reaction or response. Listen, friend, you have got to make some decisions, that the decisions you make are for you. They're not for anybody else. They're not for reaction or for a response. And let's just rip the band aid off. If we're doing things for the sake of a response, we're doing it for the wrong reason. Yeah, you're doing it for the wrong reason. So, if you decide, hey, I'm going to show them, they're going to have to deal with my absence, and you leave a space, you leave a relationship, you leave a job, you leave a community, and now you're checking back to see, hey, what they say. Do they really miss me? You're not leaving for the right reason. You're not doing what you're doing for the right reason. I want to tell you something. When I finally get to the space where I'm ready to part ways with something, I'm not going back and checking on its well being. Okay. So if I have, and over the last couple of years, I've just been in a space where I have been parting ways with organizations, with spaces, with people. And I'm finding that when I get to a space where I have declared that I'm done, then I'm done. Here's the reality of it. And I want us to understand this, and you might need to write this down. If they did not value your presence, they will not value your absence. Let me say it again. If they did not value your presence, they will not value your absence. Now, some of you will say, well, no, that's not true. Hear me clearly. If the only time you value what I brought to the table is when I'm not bringing it to the table anymore, it's not me you miss, it's what I did. Let's be clear. It's not me as a person, it's what I produced. And I'm going to tell you, I do not want to be in relationships, platonic, business, or romantic, where the only time you miss me or value me is when there's the realization that you're no longer benefiting from what I did. Be clear. What I bring to the table, the gifts that I decide to use, the compassion, the kindness, all of those things are an extension of me, but they're not me. And if you only find value in what I did because I'm no longer doing it, it says you didn't value me. You valued what I did. And for so many of us, we have assumed and adopted identity based on what we did or what we do versus who we are. I will never forget it. I've told this story before, but one of the most humbling experiences in my life. I met someone, and usually when I meet people, if they don't know who I am, and I don't make assumptions that people know who I am, they are often familiar with some of the things that I've done. And I will share, hey, I did XYZ, I created this, I'm the brainchild behind that, all of those kinds of things. And normally when I tell people that, they get impressed. They like it. They think, "Oh, wow, that's you did that? Oh, wow, I used to listen to that station all the time," or "I used to go to that website all the time," or "I used to whatever." Man, this person, I started running down my resume with them, and they're like, "That's nice, but who are you?" And I looked like, "Excuse me? What do you mean? I just told you. I've won awards. I've done this." They're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. But who are you?" And in that moment, as almost insulted, and I say almost, and I'll tell you why I get to almost, as almost insulted as I was also very, very appreciative because now I'm landing inside of a conversation with someone who's actually interested in seeing me. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of us say we want people to see us. We want people to value who we are. But then when they don't respond initially to what you do because they're looking to see who you are, you get upset. You got to ask yourself, which is it? Do I want them to value what I do or who I am? And I say or because the truth of it is there are many people who value what you do, but not who you are. But it's hard to value who I am without valuing what I do. Does that make sense? So I share that with you because I've been in the space where I wanted people to value me so much that I figured my absence would do it. And when you realize, hey, if they didn't value your presence, they're not going to value your absence. It helps you hasten your absence, particularly if you're a person who wants to be somewhere where you are valued. So you've got to start asking yourself some simple questions and some hard questions. And those questions are, hey, do I want to be valued or do I want the things I do to be valued? The answer for most people is both, but you can have one without the other. There are people who value what you do far more than who you are. It's usually because they benefit from it in some way. Now, I can't really value you if I don't value what you do. Now, I may not understand all that you do. I've got friends, thankfully, who are in multiple industries, and I don't know all of the details and the nuances of what it takes to, do some of the things that they do. But because I value them, I value the sacrifice that it takes to do what they do. I value the decisions that they are entrusted with making. I value the communities that they get to rock in because I value them. And I need you to understand that in all that you're trying to do, in all of the people you're trying to impress and all of the folks that you want to follow you and the people who you want to be a part of your everyday life. You have to get to the space where you're only willing to have people in your inner circle who value you. Now, this is where it gets tricky because valuing me means that the person of who I am is important to you. What I do may change, but who I am is what's important to you. I've gone through several pivots in my life. And in those pivots, I have learned who was in it for me and who was in it for what I did. You know, when I wasn't playing music on Bonnerfide radio, all of a sudden, all the people who were so cool with me because I could provide a service for them suddenly stopped checking in, suddenly stopped, looking to see, hey, are you okay? No, I get it. You were building or attempting to build rapport, not relationship. You were attempting to build rapport so that you could get what you want. I'm not mad at that. The problem comes when I don't understand that. If I don't understand that you're in it to network, I will make the decision and assumption that you're trying to be my friend. So then when you don't do friendly things, when you're not willing to listen, when you're not willing to offer advice, when you're too busy for that, I'll get upset because I placed an expectation on you that should have never been because I sat you in a seat that you didn't belong in. This is where we have to start taking ownership, my friends. Ownership for the people we call friend who are really associates. Ownership for the people who we have brought into our inner circle who were really only here because of what you could provide for them. And sometimes we get so blinded by our desire to be in community and to be in relationship that we welcome people into spaces that are not equipped or qualified to be there. How many people have you welcomed into your inner circle that were actually jealous of your life? And you didn't know it because, you wouldn't think to have that conversation with them because they seem to always be for you. But they only show up at certain times. They only show up when there's a crisis. They only show up when things are super fun. But when things get heavy, where are they? How regularly do they check in on you? Or are you the one that's always checking in on them? Like these are things you have to ask yourself. And I talk about these kinds of things so regularly because if you don't know how to pick people well to be on your team, you will always have a sob story. And you'll always get close to the playoffs, but never to a space where you're in the championship game or winning the championship. No, it won't happen. So it's important that you learn to choose well. It's important that you find value in understanding who you are, the integrity of who you are, and that you are willing to align with people who get it. All right, so let's go here. Because one of the hardest things on planet Earth to deal with, is wanting a friend, but getting an associate. And truth be told, when you are in certain spaces that are high level, you're guaranteed to have fewer friends. Now, I'm not talking about people who are just rude. Like, if you're rude, you need to fix that. The Bible says, and I'm going to talk Bible at some point. The Bible says that he who wants friends must first show themselves friendly. So you cannot be a person who sits in the corner all the time and expect to have friends or get mad when you don't have friends. Like, you can't do that. You have to be willing to show yourself friendly. But the reality of it is, the higher we rise, the more responsibility we take on, the fewer the friends. because not everybody can ascend. I think it's interesting when you look at modes of transportation. I think it's very interesting that an airplane versus a train versus a bus versus a car, the airplane is usually going to cost you more. That ride, if you were to book all of these things at the same time, the flight is going to cost you more. Now, some would ask, why would the flight cost more than driving? Why would the flight cost more than getting on a bus and having somebody else drive or a train? Well, here's why. For one, you travel higher. Yeah, you go up higher than the others. All of the other forms of transportation that I mentioned are all on the ground level. Even if we add a cruise or a boat in there, it's all on ground level. And so because it's on ground level, watch this, it's going to take longer to get to your destination than if you were to fly. So to fly there means you're going to travel higher, you're going to travel faster, and you're going to arrive at your destination quicker, all things being equal. Okay. Why then do we think that as you ascend in levels of responsibility, as you ascend in levels of integrity, as you ascend in levels of emotional intelligence, we often think that the same people we met in certain spaces in lower places are going to show up in higher places? It doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. People often fall off, and they fall off because the altitude is too high. They fall off because the velocity is too quick. They fall off because the idea of being able to get somewhere on a plane in 3 hours that would normally take you 13 or 14 hours is too much for them to process. And many aren't willing to pay the price. I need you to understand that as welcoming as some people can be, not everyone desires to pay the price, not just to welcome you, but to walk with you. Not just to welcome you, but to travel with you. Not everybody's willing to do that. Not everybody's equipped to do that. And I don't care how many shiny toys they have. I don't care how articulate they appear to be. I don't care how much they tell you, oh man, oh sis, I got you. I got you. Do they though? So what have you handed them? Or better yet, before you hand them anything, how have you watched their lives to determine how well they deal with responsibility? Let's go here. Have you sat back and examined people long enough to see how they do in friend groups? I'm not talking about what they do on socials. I'm talking about in their real lives. Where are the trail of bodies, right? Are they good with friendships? Or are they always out of friends? Yeah, like who are the people who have been with them for a long time? And why are they there? How'd they bond? Right? Like I have found that sometimes in certain circles, you should check what your topic of conversation is. If the commonality is only what you guys poorly experienced together, you may have a trauma bond and not a friendship. If the conversation is only around one point of commonality, whether it is your favorite sport, your favorite TV show, a shared experience, if that's the only experience you have, you may not have a friend at the level you thought. I have someone who's very dear to me, who I've known for easily 3 decades. And I find myself, whenever I do get to see them or talk to them, which is not nearly as often because of how busy they are and how busy I am. But when I do get to talk to them, oftentimes we'll find ourselves reminiscing about days gone by, what we used to do 3 decades ago as kids. But we don't necessarily have current spaces of conversation. So I have to just remind myself, okay, well, if that's the case, then I may not look at the responsibility here. I may not be as close to them as I'd like to believe. Sometimes we have to do that. That level of self-awareness says, hey, you know what? It's not always them. It's me. I'm the one who has been assessing this wrong. I'm the one who called this more than what it is. It was me. It wasn't them because they behaved in the way that they view the relationship. So now let's start examining our relationships. Let's start looking and seeing, like, hey, how often does this person reach out to me? And have I done something that would cause them not to reach out to me? Have I distanced myself from them and why? Like, whether you realize it or not, your body will tell you a lot. If you don't really like that person, then hanging out with them becomes a little bit more difficult because, like, I don't like your vibe. Maybe, you dibble and dabble in some things that I don't feel comfortable with. So, no, you got to decide that. But your body will tell you. And oftentimes we find ourselves fighting what we feel. Now, I think we have to also be wise about how we feel. One of my good friends says to me, you've got to vet your feelings. You can't allow your feelings to fully control everything you do. You've got part of vetting your feelings says, hey, my humanity might be showing up and it may be showing me something that really isn't there. How many times did you think that somebody had something against you when in real life they didn't? You just caught them in a day where they were thinking about something other than you. And in that moment, they missed you, right? Like when I say missed you, I mean, you went to speak to them and they didn't have their smile on their face, or you reached out to them and they missed, your text or whatever. Because sometimes they're not thinking about you. They've got other things that are going on, but it's not a slight against you. And sometimes we think because of the way we feel or our experiences, like, yo, they got something against me. No, 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 no. Vet your feelings. There's a difference between vetting your feelings and walking in discernment. I could throw something right now. And many of us have dismissed discernment because we're like, oh, maybe it's just a feeling. And you don't credit that. I think we as a society have to do a better job of walking in discernment. And I think most don't even get discernment. What is discernment? Discernment is the ability to look past a thing and see it for what it really is. That's discernment. So sometimes that comes by way of experience, other times that comes by way of connection. Um, but you've got to be able to look past it and see what it is. Discernment is what allows you to look past someone's beautifully crafted words and hear the intent of what they're saying. Discernment allows you to look through the sarcasm and hear the heart of what they're saying. Discernment allows you to read between the lines and see the message that's really being sent. That's discernment. And many of us have thrown that away because discernment looks too deep for some people. Some people would rather live their lives on the surface. And okay, I'm just, you just let me flow today, and I appreciate it. Um, Here's the thing: you've got to understand your makeup and your chemistry. So if you are a person that values deep connections, stop relegating yourself to people who only want to live on the surface. I'll just be frank. Well, no, I'm Gerard, but joke, joke. Um, but I like connections with depth. And I realize that every connection I have is not going to be a deep connection. I don't have um, the capacity for 7 million deep connected relationships. I don't. But the ones that I do have, I want to maximize those. So it is a little jarring sometimes when you've put somebody in a space of deep connection and you discover they only want surface level. Okay, so if all you want to do is joke and trade memes, there's a space for that. I don't necessarily have to rid my life of you, but I do have to change my expectations of you so that I don't put something on you that's heavier than what you're able to carry. And I think too often, because we want friends and we want deep connections and we want to be in love and we want all of these things, we will rush to put somebody in that place because we don't want to feel the void. Sometimes you need to feel the void so you can properly fill the void. Let me say it again. Sometimes you need to feel the void so that you can properly fill the void. Because most times we don't want to feel the absence of someone. We don't want to feel what it's like to not have XYZ. So sometimes to fill that void quickly so we don't feel that void, we try to do it as quickly as possible. We try to hire somebody brand new. We try to, put somebody else in that space who's often a poor carbon copy of what's not there anymore. And if you don't take the time to feel the void, you won't fill it right. Here's what I mean. Sometimes your attempt to fill the feeling of missing somebody causes you to get into a relationship too quickly instead of realizing, what is it that I actually miss? Is it a warm body next to me? Is it the idea of what the relationship could have been? Is it I'm missing affirmation? I'm missing assurance? What is it? And when you don't sit with it long enough, you'll try to fill it with it. I heard somebody once say that, oh God, I'm so sorry. I hope there are no kids listening. I heard somebody once say the best way to get over somebody is to get under somebody. That is a whole lie. It's a whole lie. And if you're one of those people, and I hope I didn't mess your whole game up, who feels like the way to get over somebody is to get under somebody, stop now. Because you're only complicating your life by not giving yourself the opportunity to realize, what am I missing? And sometimes you're not missing the person. Sometimes you're missing the idea that you believed in. Sometimes you're missing what you hoped you had. Sometimes you're missing the concept, not the reality. And I'm speaking this strongly because I know that there are people who, because they don't want to feel the void, they're filling it quickly with things that are not helpful to who it is you're supposed to be. So, what do you do? Let me tell you what I've learned as I close. Recently, um, part of my self awareness journey has been some startling recognitions. And one of them is I have lived my life, again, another scripture, from this concept that says there is wisdom found in a multitude of counsel. And I believe that, meaning that before you make some massively large decision, you should probably talk to not just one person, but multiple people whose wisdom you trust. Um, but the problem for me was I began living my life like that, meaning every decision needed a multitude of counsel, every single decision, every single idea. And I had to acknowledge what that was rooted in. That was rooted in a desire for approval. Yeah, I'm being very, very transparent with you guys, but I hope it helps. I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say about a thing because I wanted their approval. And I felt like, okay, if they approve of it, then I should do it. Or if they don't approve of it, then I shouldn't do it. Not realizing that sometimes the people you're asking, well, first of all, most times the people that you're asking about a thing do not share your vision because they have their own vision for their lives. They have their own vision for their careers. One of the greatest lessons that I learned was, while I was doing the original iteration of the faction, I had two great guys I was doing it with. And I felt like I didn't want to do this without them because they were part of it when I started. So I wanted, and they had to tell me, hey, listen, it's not our dream to be in WWE. We just want to talk wrestling. It's not our dream to end up in the wrestling business. Like, it'd be cool, but it's not our dream. That's your dream. So if that means you've got to do the show by yourself, do it by yourself. Don't let your dream stop because that's not our vision. And so again, I had to get their approval. Now, it was becoming clear, hey, they were getting too busy to record shows, et cetera, et cetera. No knock to them. That's where their dream and their lives were taking them. But I felt like I needed permission to be able to do that. And that thing of needing permission is rooted in a desire for approval. So what happens is you then sacrifice your own agency and your brilliance waiting for the approval of somebody else. And when you do that, you rob you and you rob the world of what it is that you are brilliantly created to do. And so over these last few weeks, as I had been looking for people's approval and I had been looking for people's assistance, that's probably more accurate here. And for one reason or another, they weren't able to help, I began to start looking and realizing, okay, you got to start doing some of this stuff yourself. And you don't need anybody's approval. You are brilliant. And you know what started happening? I had to start seeing the things that other people outside of me were saying that were accurate. There were people that were saying, man, you are fearless, you are brilliant, you are creative, you are resourceful, you're all of those things. And I forgot, God help me, I forgot that that's who I was and that's who I am because I allowed other voices who had gained proximity to me to begin saying things that were not true. And so because my heart was tuned into the voice of their radio station, those things got in my heart. And I had to actively get them out. And you only get them out by losing your affinity for that station. Listen, I don't listen to country music. No, not the country music. I don't listen to it because I don't have an affinity for it. So I'm not tempted to turn on the station. I'm not tempted to go look for a country artist when I'm listening to music. But what I like, R&B, gospel, hip hop, jazz, I'll go look for something like that. The only way you're going to tune those voices out is to tune out and drown and starve that appetite. I live by a motto before we go, and that is this: feed your faith, starve your fears. If you want to see something grow, you feed it. If you want to see it die, starve it. Stop subscribing to the people who are not good for you. Stop making space for their voice to speak into your life. Some people you have to unfollow. Some people you have to block. Some conversations you need to limit and put boundaries on. We are only going to talk about XYZ. I had to fight this thing about wanting people to know the truth about me. So if you're telling something that's inaccurate, I want to correct it. Those days are over. You know why? Because when you understand the voices who are speaking and you realize that what they're speaking out of is their own pain, what they're speaking out of are inaccuracies and the way they view the world, it's not my responsibility to fix your view of me. It's my responsibility to do the right thing. And if you're choosing to be open to the accuracy of who I am, then you will see things as they ought to be. I gotta go, but I'm just getting warmed up. So I hope that today's episode has been helpful to you. I hope that you have found some nuggets in here that are resourceful, that are successful, that will put you in the space where you ultimately desire to be. I want you to live long and prosper, and I want your life to be enjoyable. I don't want you to go to work as an escape from your life, but I want your life to be so enjoyable that you enjoy going home from work. Yeah, that's what I want for you. And I believe you can have it. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know what this episode has done for you. Please leave me a comment wherever you're listening to this, or find me on the socials at Bonnerfide. I keep talking about wanting to do a live episode. I'm just going to do it. And whoever shows up, shows up. Whatever questions you have, you have. But I love you guys dearly. And I am committed to seeing us walk in wisdom, walk in success, and walk in strength. And we'll do that as we continue to have these Bonnerfide conversations. Ever had a conversation with your friends and said, this should be a podcast? Well, this is that. Welcome to Bonnerfide Conversations. Yeah!